we've been talking a lot lately about the psychological burden of training. I took a rest week a little while ago just because I was struggling with how much training was taking from my life. Tell me a little bit about the psychological burden of training and what you understand it to mean.
Hmm. So there's a lot that goes into training that doesn't actually involve lifting weights or running or anything like that. There's the principal one being the amount of time you have to lay aside to do it. Now, I'm not fond of approaches that require 2 or 3 hour workouts or anything like that. I'm not saying those approaches don't work. They certainly do. They work very well for me when I first started as a 19-year-old on a gap year with no commitments. But for serious people, for adults with kids and jobs and things, it's a non-starter. So that notwithstanding, even little workouts like what we're doing at the moment, Bodyweight Buccaneer, the workouts take what, 30 minutes door
Mm-hmm.
to door for me and about the same for you. And then the longest workouts of the week are my runs where I'm doing kind of 4 or 5 miles, and that's still under an hour
Mm-hmm.
start to finish. So you'd think, oh, that's relatively easy to do, and it is easy to do. I get up, I get dressed, I put my weighted vest on, I warm up, I go out, I come back. But over time, it really grinds you down, doesn't it? Training, and it's not just when you're training as often as we are at the moment. Kind of 6 to 8 workouts a week. Even when you're only training 2 or 3 days a week, you say on something like a full body weightlifting routine, maybe with a couple of cardio sessions in there as well. That time sink, no matter how short you make it does just progressively grind you down. And then when that happens, the workout quality starts to suffer. I know you've mentioned your concentration
Mm.
goes into the toilet, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
And then risk of injury rises, and then the workouts just cease to become productive, which kind of worsens the negative attitude that you're already developing towards training. And then you can end up mentally burned out, not physically burned out. Like, you could still train, there's nothing wrong with your ability to actually execute the workouts. It's just a mental, your ability to engage with the workouts mentally is just completely shot.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a real problem. And I'd say that's probably more of a problem for most people than the physical burnout of training, because I'm of the opinion that people worry a lot about the spectre of overtraining, but I'm very much of the opinion, and it's completely unscientific opinion, but I believe that really the only people who need to worry about true overtraining are like elite athletes and very people performing at a very high level. Your average person, your average weekend warrior who just lifts weights to be strong and in shape, for the sake of himself and his family, he doesn't really need to worry about overtraining in the physiological sense, but certainly in the psychological sense. Look at it this way. Like, I love painting my models, and I find that with my two-a-days, I'm on a two-a-day today, so I have to train again this evening. I'd just much rather finish work and just get my Warhammer out and put some paint on a model than go out and do what is, even knowing that the workout's only going to take half an hour. I just kind of don't want to do it.
I've noticed a massive change since I've condensed my workouts into. I now do two workouts, 2 or 3 days a week, and I have two rest days. So on one of those rest days, I just go out for a walk in the morning, and then I pick Connie up from school, and my day is done. And just knowing that in the middle of the week, I've got a day where I'm not I'm not training, don't have to think about it, means that come the next day that I'm back to training, it does feel psychologically much less stressful.
Oh, absolutely. And like the days that you've stopped me doing, because I was doing morning evening workouts Monday through to Thursday, and then a run on a Friday and a run on a Sunday. But you stopped me doing that, and you've got me doing 2-1 run, 2-1 run now. And that's much easier. The days where I only have to do one session, it's like it's taken a mental weight off.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. And we've got things particularly easy because obviously we work for us,
Mm.
so we don't have to, if we can down tools, go back to work if we want to, and all that other stuff. So we've really got no excuse to not find the time to train. It's just finding that sometimes the desire just isn't there,
Yeah.
and that is a sign of kind of a cycle being psychologically drained, which is all the more important why it's critical to spend a good amount of time. Yeah, I'm talking years training, doing the absolute bare minimum training that you can do to make forward progress. So probably at most 3 lifting workouts a week, and then in addition to that, at most 3 hard cardio sessions a week.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be doing any more than that for years because what I see a lot of people do is they try and they'll run like a bro split or whatever, and they'll train 4, 5, 6 days a week, and they very quickly psychologically burn out of training. I think that's the problem there.
Because the goal with training is daisy chaining as many good workouts as you can.
Yeah, and you can't do that if you don't want to be there.
No.
If you don't want to be there, you're not going to make any progress. You're not going to have any. You're not going to have a good session.
And how do you know the difference between I'm psychologically burnt out or I just can't be asked?
Ah, that's a difficult one. It's different for everyone. Um, it's another one of the reasons why I stress doing the absolute bare minimum for long enough, because then you'll be much better able to tell the difference because you've already proven to yourself that you're committed to training, and it's a fixed firm part of your life. You feel awkward when you're not doing it. If you have feelings of if you have feelings of guilt around not training. So, for example, on Monday we went to Nottingham, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
You took me to Warhammer World for our anniversary because I said I needed a change of scenery, and that was lovely. And I felt a bit guilty about not training because I knew that physically I was capable of it, but mentally I didn't want to. And
Yeah,
that's an example of being psychologically burnt out on training if there's a sense of guilt around taking those rest days. Um, but it's one of those things where you just have to be honest with yourself. And a lot of
yeah, I was
people really
going to
struggle
say
with
that.
that. I don't have anything definitive to say because ultimately, if you're a feckless and lazy shitweasel, then you're always going to be a feckless and lazy shitweasel until you deal with that. And that then you're gonna drop weight and you're gonna drop workouts because you're feckless and lazy, not because you're psychologically burnt out. But if you're earnest and hardworking, and you can prove that by sticking with a program for many months, and years,
Mm.
then you know that it's due to psychological factors. So with me, I've been training week in, week out without fail, planned rest weeks aside for 15 years, entering my 16th year this year, come September. And I know that I'm not being lazy.
Mm.
When I don't want to train, it's because I'm psychologically fatigued because I've got 16 years of coming up for 16 years of proof that I'm not lazy. But if you're the sort of person who's, a bit really patchy and can't stick at training for more than kind of like 2 or 3 months without needing a break, then
That's not what we're talking
no,
about here.
I'm sorry. There's something wrong with your programming in that it's not got planned rest weeks, which should be perfectly sufficient to keep you
Going.
mentally and physically on the right level. If it's got proper deloads and rest weeks in it, you won't physically or mentally burn out. And of course, you're actually following it as written. You've got the
Mm-hmm.
self control to do that. Um, but you're still feeling that way. Then it's probably more of a you problem. And don't train if you don't want to. It makes a difference to me. But you can't also claim to want to be strong and in shape because you're not. You need to work on that character flaw more than you need to worry about the ins and outs of your training schedule.
And there are things you can do to reduce the psychological burden, aren't there? Such as this week I took a different running route that had a bit of undulation in it because I wanted to challenge myself a little bit more.
Mm.
And it also kept me engaged in the run
Mm.
itself. So rather than just going and plodding on the out and back route that I do sometimes, I picked a different route.
Oh
And
yeah,
there are
like
other
I do that.
things.
Like I did that the other day, didn't I? I ran around past the hospital instead of out because normally I run
Yeah.
to the next town over and back. But it's a really dull run, as you've just said. So one of the things I find easier with the running is to run through town and then take side streets because there's a little bit of variation in what I'm looking at, and that's enough to kind of keep me at least somewhat enthused with running.
What
Uh,
about in the gym?
in the gym, well, we just quit the gym, didn't we? Canned our membership because I found the environment of the gym we were training at just so oppressive because gym culture has become so damn stupid. It's just full of girls dressed in basically not or barely dressed at all, staring at themselves in the mirror for 20 minutes and filming themselves for an unpaid extra in their content,
Mm.
which may or may not be driving people to OnlyFans. You've got lots of jacked up steroid bros. They're far greater numbers than they ever were before. When I first started training, the guys on gear were actually serious about training and were very respectful, and they were the sort of people that you would want to be around. Now it's just bunch of bloody Barry from Barrett Homes with his turkey teeth getting jacked up to go to Magaluf, and young kids as well that can't be asked to eat properly, so just pump themselves full of Dianabol or whatever. So yeah, we got bored of the environment, the atmosphere, and one of
Mm.
the things that's reignited our enthusiasm for training was doing bodyweight bucking, wasn't it?
Yeah,
And training outdoors. And you were really skeptical of that to start with.
I was.
but it's made a huge difference. I know I started this recording by complaining about it and about the boredom and the hype, because one of the things with bodyweight training is that you need quite high weekly volume
Mm.
to get sufficient stimulus to make forward progress versus weightlifting workouts, which obviously you can do less of and still get results from. But no, it's been revolutionary in terms of my mental engagement with training again.
Before we quit the gym, though, there were two things that I remember that kept me a bit more engaged. I remember when I started doing oh, what are they called? Where you do lots of different exercises in a row with the barbell.
Oh, complexes.
Complexes,
Yeah,
yes.
complexes are good. So the way I look at gym like weightlifting workouts is that there are mandatory things that you have to do,
Hmm.
hence mandatory, and then there are supplementary lifts that you also have to do, but you can be less prescriptive about it. So your mandatory stuff as your core movement patterns, so squatting, hinging, vertical and horizontal pressing, vertical and horizontal pulling. You need to have something of that in everything that you do, in every to create a balanced program.
Mm.
And then obviously there are objectively some lifts that are better than others. So for example, if we're talking about a squat movement pattern, a barbell back squat is objectively better than a leg press.
Yeah.
And unless you're physically unable to do a back squat, it's just better. And so you want to be doing those, and those core movement patterns you want to keep fixed and firm for a good amount of time.
Hmm.
You don't want to be rotating, like, I'll do a front back squat this week and a front squat next week and then back squat the week after, and then I'm going to do Zercher squats and then I'll do jump squats or whatever. No, you don't want to do that. You want to pick and stick with those. It's mandatory stuff because that's what's going to drive the balance of your progress.
Mm.
Then you've got your supplementary movements, which are just as important for prehab and rehab. So
Mm.
you know, preventing injury and helping you with things like little tendinitises that most people pick up in their elbows from lifting and stuff. And that's stuff like barbell curls and tricep extensions and calf work and ab work. That stuff you can be a lot more fluid about. So I typically would do preacher curls for biceps. Let's just go to biceps. I'd do preacher curls because I like them.
Mm.
But sometimes I'll be like, I don't want to do preacher curls this week. I know I'm going to do concentration curls because I like them too. And I'll do those. And I don't really care what people do for, like, when I'm with clients, it's like, oh, Phil, what should I do for arms? Like, I don't care. Just do whatever you want. Doesn't matter. Same thing with this is really an odd one, but like the handles that you use for things like pull downs and seated rows on machines. Someone said to me once, he's like, oh, it was a client. He's like, oh, Phil, what's the best handle to use for lat pull downs? And I was just like, I don't care. Just I use whatever's on the machine, provided it's a sensible handle. Like they have some of these like modern. They had one at our gym, didn't they? That like rotates.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's like one of these modern doohickeys. Like I won't use that stuff. But if it's a straight wide bar or a straight narrow bar or a V bar, I don't care. I'll just use whatever's on whoever used the machine last. And that gives you kind of mental variety, doesn't it? Keeps you engaged.
You can tell we're two very boring people living in the same house, because that was going to be my second thing about how I'd walk up to my pull down and be like, "Oh, which handle am I using today?"
Oh yeah, you're very sad, aren't you?
But it's that little variation that does
Yeah,
keep you engaged and give you a
yeah,
little bit of
yeah,
a kick to be like, okay, you're here today. This is something slightly different rather than
yeah.
just the same
I
movements.
read an anecdote once about it might have been a Dan John thing where he talked about work doing strength and conditioning work for young athletes, because what a lot of people don't understand about young athletes, like we're talking like American football players, proper football players, that sort of thing, they don't want to do the gym really. They want to play their sport.
Mm.
They have to do the gym so that they're strong and in shape and don't get injured and stuff, but they don't really want to be there. So he talked a little bit about, or whoever wrote it, which I think was Dan John, but it might not have been, basically talked about again this idea of mandatory work, and then if the kids wanted to do some curls, you just let them go and do some curls, and like, because that's just being a good coach,
Yeah,
keeping them psychologically
keep them
engaged
engaged.
with what they're doing, means they will actually go to the gym and do it.
Yeah.
I do put my head in my hands when I see people being prescriptive about this stuff, because unless you're like a bodybuilder preparing for a bodybuilding show at a reasonably high level, like the particular variation of curl you do really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. What do you want to say now? You're looking
That
at me.
was it.
Well, that was it.
I think that was an overview of how we keep ourselves engaged with training and how you know when You're not engaged.
Yeah, I won't do a summary because I've forgotten all of what I said. But I will say subscribe to my emails if you're not subscribed to my daily emails. philtimon.co.uk/lift. List. philtimon.co.uk/list. When you subscribe, you'll get the third edition of my book, How to Build Muscle and Strength the Natural Way. And I know it is a lead magnet, for want of a better term, all those horrible marketing things. But unlike the 12-page Canva guides you get from most people, this is a fairly chunky piece of work, isn't it, with workouts in it and all sorts.
Yeah.
So yeah, oh, there's another video as well, so you can listen to me talk for another 15 minutes. Who doesn't want to do that? So yeah, subscribe to my emails if you're not subscribed to my emails. Thank you very much. Goodbye.